Eoin Tuohy, good morning. How are you?
Very good, Brendan. How are you? How are you keeping?
I'm very well, very well. Thank you for taking time on your early Sunday morning to talk to me on the podcast. I'm very excited about this one. You're a Irish National Trainee at the European Space Agency. So what I thought is maybe you can give us an overview of what that means, what that is.
Yeah. Thanks a million for having me on. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, as you said, my role is I'm an Irish National Trainee at the European Space Agency, and I'm actually based at the European Astronaut Centre here in Cologne, in Germany, where I am now. And yeah, what this role essentially is the Irish Research Council fund two students. They've been doing it for a couple of years now. To go to different European Space Agency centres throughout Europe. So I'm in Cologne, or the people are in Darmstadt in Germany or in the Netherlands. And they provided for funding for 1 or 2 years for you to get involved in whatever field your topic is in. So for me, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I'm in the European Astronaut Centre. And I'm coming towards the end of my 2 years now, but I've been working a bit with the Spaceship EAC team and the Space Medicine team. Essentially, what we're doing is just developing technologies for human spaceflight. So that's kind of what I've been up to now.
Amazing, and I definitely want to dig in maybe a little bit more on the exact mechanics of what you do there. But maybe can we take it back then? Just how did you get to that role? Obviously, the European Space Agency, very sought after. I would imagine very difficult to get into it and all that kind of stuff. But what did you study in school? Like, what were your subjects coming out of the leaving? And
Yeah, so in the leaving cert, I actually I had a bit of an interest one in the leaving cert. I didn't really going into college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do till like literally the 11th hour. So what I studied was I was a bit more science based. So I had chemistry and biology. I didn't actually have physics, which is interesting for mechanical engineering. But then I had history and a language, French. Not that my French says I studied 6 years ago, but I did sit in the classroom. But yeah, it was literally until the very last minute. I had done some aptitude tests and stuff. These, I don't know what they're called anyway. I can't remember the name of them. And a lot of them had said like, oh, like you're tuned to medicine and stuff, and kind of the career guidance at the time I had was like, oh, go for medicine. And I actually, believe it or not, I watched a lot of Scrubs at the time. I'm like, oh, this sounds cool. Like Scrubs was my career guidance. So I was just so I was kind of gearing up towards that, and then it was literally until the last decision day. One of my best friends came up and he's like, "Oh, have you heard of engineering?" And honest to God, I was like, "What's that?" Like, as an 18-year-old, be like, "What's engineering?" So I didn't really know when I looked into it, and then I was like, "Oh, this like tickles my fancy." So to go forward a bit, then I was nowhere near the level of getting medicine. I just threw it down for the crack's sake, but I wasn't at that level. But I was lucky enough to manage to scrape into engineering. And when I actually went back and looked in hindsight, all those aptitude tests and all after medicine was like engineering everywhere, and I just didn't
really,
catch it.
yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of the route that got me into engineering. So I went on to do mechanical engineering as an undergrad in UCD. So that was kind of my route into college, like.
And mechanical engineering, then how difficult would you say that is? Because as you know, when you're in university and talking to other faculties, some courses are, you have 5 or 6 hours a week, and then your study time is quite easy going. In other courses, you're 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 at night. How tough did you find mechanical engineering starting off, or was it something you took to quite quick?
Yeah, so I was kind of like I really like maths. Maths was one of my favorite subjects in school, so I definitely had a leg up in kind of that division. But there was other things like as I mentioned, I didn't do physics, so really basic physics elements were all completely new to me. So I really struggled with that in the first year. But you put that down and get through it. But in regards to the whole course, yeah, I think I'd be fair. I think it'd be fair to say it's one of the more intense courses, and there's a good few amount of assignments. A good amount of work, but it's kind of a good course in that for UCD anyway, the courses are very large at the start, but you're kind of in a good bubble, so to speak. So you're around it, you're getting engineering talk everywhere, and you're kind of struggling together. But it was intense, but I think it was manageable. It was manageable, like.
Yeah. And you said there at the beginning, and similar to myself and most people that I've talked on this podcast, no one really so far knew quite what they wanted to do at that kind of leaving cert 18, 19 years old stage, which is very comforting, I think, to a lot of people who might listen that are in the same boat, because oftentimes you might think, oh, there's so many people focused, they know exactly what to do. Actually, that's rare, I would say. But when you got into university then, I mean, at what was there a point where you kind of thought, God, space exploration is for me, or did that happen in university, or what was your thinking as you were going through mechanical engineering?
Yeah, so it wasn't. It was actually much, much further down the line that I actually got into space. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was actually when I was going through university. So the undergrad. So straight, I did the 3 years of the undergrad, and then straight on, I went to do a master's again in UCD, but it was mechanical engineering with business. So it was linked with the Smurfit School there, but. Yeah, so when I was doing the engineering, as it got more intense and into the later years, it obviously got a lot more engineering, and then the option, there was this route for all the different masters. So you just on pure mechanical engineering, chemical, electrical, or whatever it be, and this business one came up, and yeah, that kind of really interested me. It was more the business side, so the course is a bit more in like engineering management, but also just business. So a lot of the people who do this course might not go into engineering firms after, but some of the big four firms like Accenture or whatever them, but also in just general management positions out. So that was something that really, really interested me. And still, it wasn't until later down the line, a very short snippet, but after my masters, I went to Australia for 2 years to do like the work travel visa, and it was actually only in that time that spaceflight picked up as an interest and something that I realized was even a possibility. So actually, my 5 years of studying, and I put my hands up. Maybe it was me didn't apply myself or be fully observant, but I didn't realize it was too much of a possibility. So it wasn't for me until much later.
Right.
So well after leaving cert that I kind of found this. But yeah.
Yeah, which again is good to, I think people will find comforting to hear. So you took 2 years out. Is that something you're happy you did?
Yeah, 100%. When I talk to people, like I couldn't recommend it more. I actually had leaving the masters, I had a job offer on the table with Procter and Gamble. So I did an internship there for 6 months in Manchester, making nappies. Believe it or not, serious work going on there. Yeah, but so I had a job offer from them.
What's the mechanical engineering behind? Sorry, what's the mechanical engineering behind making a nappy?
Oh, serious! It's actually like it's a well hidden trade secret. Like, but it's something like in there they make. In this one plant, I think they have 7 production lines, and each line makes 1,000 nappies a minute. So it's 7,000. It's a huge factory, serious operation. Like, not great for landfills now, but I think they're working on that.
Yeah, but it's good experience though.
Oh, like it was really, really good experience. There was a whole range from kind of product engineering, so like getting the product, making sure everything's working, to project management, like, hey, we need to implement, I don't know, maybe new line scanners for materials. Hey, can you work that? And then as well, like for an intern, it was great because you got hands-on experience with the tools. Every day you need to repair machines. You get a little experience on the line with the operators. So it was a really huge range of experience. I couldn't, if anyone gets the opportunity, I can't say take it enough. Like it was a brilliant company and brilliant opportunity to work for, you know.
Yeah, and it must have been a big decision for you then to turn down, because for such a major company, of course, to get a offer from a company like that, it must have been a big decision for you.
Yeah, it was. You know, when you're coming out of college and you see a salary there, not just like a weekly wage or whatever, or an hourly wage, and then like there's huge career potentials there. So I did have to have a think about it for a long time, and it was the first kind of time in my life that I had to make decision, that everything wasn't like a real get off the beaten track here or not, because like it was like, hey, junior cert, leaving cert, then you go to undergrad, then you go to masters, and that's nearly like the thing now. Everyone has to have a masters, even is the vibe. So it was like, this is the first point where it was like, hey, do I get this job? Do I take this job, or do I actually like stop, go back and do travel? So there was a bit of thinking of it, but I decided in the end to go to travel, and I've zero regrets. Like nothing against the job or anything, but I was just like, I really felt like that was great it's really cool. Australia was deadly, I'm sure, as everyone knows. But it was a really good time to just kind of not to be too focused on the, like, what's your career, what's your path, and just take some time out and think. And actually, in hindsight now, it gave me that time to have a think and look around and find what is now my passion, you know? So
Yeah.
I couldn't recommend it highly enough to anyone who's considering it, you know?
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, I did it as well, but I did one year, and very similar experience to you. I think it was good just to get that mindset away from what was kind of mapped out, as you said there previously. You know, college, get a job or whatever, and gave me a bit of a focus to decide what I want to do next, and then came back and did a master's. But so, what was the thinking then in that 2 years as you built up to the end of your traveling and onto your next step? What did you decide to do?
Yeah, so it was at that time, like, when I went over, like, I couldn't really get any engineering jobs. I think it was a visa thing or whatever. But it was like, okay, so I just did some other jobs to fund my travel, and obviously I wasn't working then in what I studied too much. So I was like, hey, let's like, what would you like to do? And obviously with the internship, I was kind of going down a manufacturing route. And I was like, oh, is there anything else? You'd like to do, really. Actually, there was one story before I went out. I was talking to my dad and my godfather around the table, and it was kind of at the decision time, like, oh, what do you want to work? Do you want to take the job and stuff? And he was saying, at the time, Tesla were kind of still up and coming and being a big engineer ahead. The Tesla car companies, I was like, oh, like, this is amazing. And I was talking to my godfather who'd never heard of them or anything, and I'm like, oh, they're like self-driving, they're like super safe, they're battery environment, and I was just like big time fanboying, but like from an engineering perspective. And for like 10 minutes, I was eating, like, chewing the ear off him, and then it just stopped, and then my dad just goes to me, okay, now talk to him with that passion about nappies. He's just like, so I think that was actually a big decision point as well. But yeah, so it's
That's
kind of
really
like,
cool.
oh, what's
Yeah.
professional? Yeah, yeah. So like, I was like, oh, that'd be deadly to work for Tesla, or like one of these big crowd, and like something I'm that passionate about. And then I think at some point during the Australia travels, I was watching a couple of videos just on space flight or something. And I was never a huge big like space nerd and stuff. Of course, I'm interested, and I always had a bit of an interest, but I wasn't like, oh, this person you talk to and everything's space, you know. It wasn't that at all. Like, so
Yeah.
I was watching one or two videos anyway, and I came across, and then I just kind of started looking into it, and I'm like, oh, like, that'd be cool. And I was like, well, what do you need to work at NASA or be American? Like, that was it, because in my head it was like, you have to be NASA or work in the US, so that was it. So I started looking around, and then it was only really then, just through some Google search and stuff, I realized, like, the European Space Agency is open to all Europe. They've a lot of potential, what they do, what their missions are, who their astronauts are, blah blah blah. And I was like, this looks really really cool. So then I started googling around, and I was like, maybe two master degree came up, and I'm like, maybe that's the way. Maybe I take one step back to do two step forwards, you know. So the two that actually came up at the time, the first one I saw was one called the International Space University, and they do a master's course. They're based in Strasbourg in France for their master's course, but they also do a summer course, which is like 12 weeks, and that can be anywhere in the world. It changes. And then they also do a course in Adelaide in Australia. That's kind of more for people in the southern hemisphere, so travel's easier. And I was looking at them, but the fees were ridiculous. So they're private. They're not. There's no funding or anything.
Right.
So the fees are like skyrocket. And I just clicked on the fees, and I was like, no, close the page. Never think of it again.
Yeah.
So then I came home from my brother's wedding. And at the time, just coincidentally, Trinity College Dublin had a careers fair for space. Now it was a small room. You can imagine in Ireland there's not too much going on, more so back then. And there was the two university courses. So there was the ISU, the International Space University, and UCD had a very recently new space course lined up. So I went away and I was looking at the UCD one, and I got talking to people, and then I just popped over to the other guys, the ISU, and I was talking to the guy there, and he's like, no, like, yeah, it's like mad money, but there's like, we've tons of scholarships from everyone. Like, that's the idea. We know no student can afford this, so we get scholarships in. And then all of a sudden the price halved, or even less than half. I'm like, oh, this is an option. So I applied to the two. I applied to UCD and the International Space University, and yeah, I got accepted. I got accepted to both, or the provisional one for the UCD, and in the meantime, I got accepted to ISU. So I withdrew my UCD one, and I went to the International Space University. There was a number of reasons for it. One, for me it just was a better fit. I think one, it was studying abroad, which I hadn't done before. So it was like,
Yeah.
that was a great opportunity. And in hindsight, if anyone gets the opportunity to study abroad in any field or anything, definitely do it. You won't regret it. But as well, it for me, at my time with an engineering background, and the other ones, the master's one maybe in UCD had a bit of a physics focus for an element, from what it seemed from my point of view. But the other one was like, hey, let's just go with the ISU. So that started in September of 2018. So just before I left Australia, I was gearing up, and I came home for a month, and then I shipped off to Strasbourg to start studies for the year.
Amazing. In the International Space University. And what did you study there then? What was the topic?
Yeah, so this is the first spacing. It's quite a unique course in that it's not depth. Like, it's not like a master's in engineering. Hey, you're mechanical engineering. We're going right down to the bottom of the belly of the beast here. It's rather quite a broad course. So they actually have 7 different disciplines that you study. So, for example, I think if I can remember them offhand, there's engineering, anyway, space engineering, space science, policy and law, human performance in space, which is pretty much medicine and how the human body works. You've management, humanities, and I think air applications, which is like satellites and that sort of thing. So they kind of get pretty much all disciplines you'll see in any business, engineering, science, law, management, and they're all applied to space. So the course is really unique in that you have people from all disciplines coming in. So I came in as an engineer, but I was studying there was like a doctor sitting beside me, a lawyer there, an economist behind me. So everyone comes in with like maybe an undergrad at least, or a master's in their specialty, and they all come in to focus on space and get a broad idea in space. So it's really quite unique in that sense. And it's also, I think, the smallest university in Europe. So there's only 40 students per year, and there's only 1 year, like, if that makes sense. So it's really it's a bit of a change from like the UCD.
Yeah, and does that make it very, very difficult to get placed in it as well? Although you said there's
Yeah, I've heard mixed things. So I have heard people haven't been accepted, haven't been rejected, and then obviously people have gotten in as well. So yeah, I think, but they do have plenty of options, and again, it's super international. So it's entirely international. There's people from China, people from I don't know. We have people from Oman. All throughout Europe, America, Canada, South America. Like it's literally every country in the world. They have people coming from. So there is a big pot, like, you know.
Yeah, sounds like a fantastic experience. A year in Strasbourg is no hardship anyway.
Yeah, 100%. No, I couldn't fault it. The course itself was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, you make some very good friends, but it is quite intense. Like, you know, it's a short, like 9 months of classes, and then you've an internship at the end of it. But it's kind of go every 2 weeks. You've got a heavy assignment at least, like, you know. So it's but really, really good. You learn to work with people from different cultures, people from different nationalities, people from different backgrounds, and it's kind of like a big melting pot, you know. So it's very good.
And is that university then very closely linked to the European Space Agency, NASA? Is that how the placement or the Irish National Traineeship that you're doing came about?
Yeah, so at the end they have internships, and they do have links. As I said, they have scholarships. Like ESA provides scholarships to them because they obviously recognise the masters as a good masters, and they get a lot of people from it. And likewise with NASA. So they have links, and they help you obtain these internships. And it's not just with the big agencies; it's also with like small companies located throughout, and research institutes, and so on and so forth. But for me, I applied to one of the internships they had was in the European Astronaut Centre. With the team Spaceship EAC, and the option, you do a 3 or 6 month internship, and I had to go for the 6. And so I started off, and I moved up to Cologne in Germany, and I started the internship, and 2 months in, or maybe even 1 month in, this application for the traineeship came in for. So I applied to that, and it was during the time that I got accepted for that. I ended my internship 2 months early and then just started the traineeship. So I just kind of, Monday I came in, I was an intern, and Tuesday I was a trainee. You know, there was very little difference from day to day stuff.
Yeah. And what was that application process for the traineeship? Was that a long process, a difficult process?
It was long, but just more so maybe in sense of time than actual steps. So if I remember correctly now, it was at the time you had to apply via your Irish university. So I was lucky in that I had the degree already from UCD. So that was my application route. Because it was the Irish research, I needed an Irish university. So you contact your university about this, the office that's relevant, and they'll nominate you forward as one of their selection. And then you need to submit a CV and a few things like that. And then after that, it was just there was a bit of waiting. They waited to see who the candidates were from your university, and once they had them all, they nominate some. I don't know how many applied. I have no idea. And then once you get that, you get an interview. So there's an interview in town in Dublin there, and you just go in, and they have some people from the Irish Research Council and some people from the European Space Agency. And after that, I think it was very soon after that, like a week or two, you get the call saying go ahead. So it was me and one other one other guy who got the same thing. Actually, quite interesting. The two of us were both interns in Spaceship EAC, both called Eoin, and then both got the traineeship. Both got, like, it was like we were just on the same path, like, you know. But yeah, so that was the process. Unfortunately, to my knowledge now, unless it's changed, so the program has finished, which I've just heard here today. So it was set for 5 years. I think we were the fourth year of it. With COVID, then they paused it for a year, and now I believe the funding has been redirected to other funding schemes, not that way.
Right.
So yeah, I still haven't 100% found if it's been terminated or not, but definitely, if people are interested, it's definitely worth looking if it's still there. I guess if people are listening actually and are interested in it, that's one way to do kind of what I did. Another way is something called the Young Graduate Trainee Program. And this is completely Ireland aside. This is just the European Space Agency run this. Every year they do 100 of these positions that are pretty much the exact same in all but name and some admin duties. And they do 100 positions all throughout ESA, and it's open to everyone in the member states of ESA. So if you are interested in doing what I'm doing, and if the Irish one is confirmed to be finished, the Young Graduate Trainee is what it's called, and is a very similar program. So
fantastic. And people can go on the ESA website and figure out more information on that part because it's directly through them. Brilliant. Yeah,
exactly. If you just Google Young Graduate Trainee ESA, you'll get all the info there. Yeah.
Super. And Eoin, can we talk a little bit then about what you do in ESA? Because I've obviously seen the snippets of the stuff you're linked to and the things you've been involved in, and obviously they look really cool to me. Can you talk a little bit about them?
Yeah, I can indeed. So my role in there, I kind of have two hats. One is with something called the Spaceship EAC team, and the other is with the Space Medicine team. So yeah, I'll talk about the space medicine first because it's a bit more straightforward. So what the space medicine team do essentially is they're there to look after the health of the astronauts. So the European Astronaut Centre, we're primarily an operational centre. And when the astronauts prepare for a mission, when they're on the ISS or when they return, they need prep, they need care while they're on there, and they need rehab essentially. So the space medicine team are all based around that, and there's a few different pockets in that. So we've like, for example, we've exercise specialists. We've a lot of actual doctors that do the medicine. I think there was a few nurses once upon a time, and a ton of biomedical engineers. And then as well, there's also another end of that, which is kind of research, so understanding the human body, what happens in space. There's a lot of changes. We have a good understanding, but obviously no one knows everything. In the words of Dara O'Brien, if we knew science, if we knew everything, it would just stop. So, so like they're trying to get a much better understanding. And then one of these teams is the medical projects teams, and that's kind of what I'm involved with. And what we're looking at doing is we take technologies that are existing on space, existing on the air. So they might be used in hospitals or ambulances or just ready to go on air. And we look at adapting them and bringing them up to space. So obviously the big elements are you got microgravity. So if basic things here on air won't work in space because microgravity, things depend on gravity to function. Other ones is radiation, so you've got a lot more radiation up there. In the ISS where that goes, so that's only about 400 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. It's increased radiation, but when we want to go to the moon and stuff, which is 350,000 kilometers or so, the radiation is much more because we don't have the protection from the mesosphere, it's called. So we have to make sure devices are radiation protected, and then other things like trying to reduce the weight is also a good one because we're sending them up in a rocket. So there's a good few elements like that. So the medical products team kind of identify technologies that might need adaptations. We might do some testing on them, see how they work in certain environments. So to give a practical example, something we did was this device called Tempest Pro. And essentially, it's a paramedic's best friend. It's about the size of a lunchbox, and it's got like a blood pressure monitor, ECG, temperature probes, everything a paramedic wants, and it can actually be linked to a defibrillator. And it's got telemedicine, and it's super robust. So the military love this thing, and we're like, hey, this could be a really good use for spaceflight. It's kind of an all-in-one. So at the minute, the team are prepping it and working with the company to adapt it and get it ready for spaceflight. But what I did at the start of my traineeship, one of the steps to get things towards spaceflight is validating it in a similar environment. So one of these environments is Antarctica because it's extremely remote. There's not much support, so you're isolated. And it's an extremely harsh environment. So if you go outside, you're probably going to die for a long time if you don't have shelter. So it does have some analogs analogous. It's a bit analogous to space. So what we do is we send the equipment down there with a bunch of simulations. We want them to run through certain things, kind of push it to the limits a little bit and see where it falls down or where it succeeds. And then, so when we bring it to spaceflight, we can take what we learn from there, change a few things, give that feedback to the company, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of what I've been doing. So you can see it's a bit more engineering than medicine in the space medicine team, along with a few other elements and stuff. So that was the space medicine team, and then there is the Spaceship EAC team, which is actually headed by an Irish man, Dr. Eoin Tuohy. So he's the head of this team, and this has been here since 2015. But the idea is, as I said, the whole European Astronaut Centre is an operational centre, and it's focused on the ISS. And that was due to finish in 2024. It's now been extended to 2028, 2030. But long story short, it's coming to an end. It's like 21 years old now, so it's doing well. Wow. But all good things come to an end. So the kind of focus was here is like, what are we going to do in the future? Like, what's the next step? Like. So the next thing is, as I'm sure most people have heard now, the moon. We want to go back in 2024. NASA have been advertising a lot. ESA are very much an integral part of that. A lot of critical part elements are ESA provided. But we're like, everyone's going to the moon. Let's kind of start focusing on the moon. So this team here, it's a brilliant team. It's predominantly students led. So some of the management, as I said, Aidan is permanent, and he has a few research fellows and trainees, which would be kind of like more the oversight of the team, the admin, and kind of supporting the rest of the team, which is primarily student based. But what we do is just take all these technologies, go a little more. Something in spaceflight is called something we use all the time is TRL, which is technology readiness level, and it's essentially how mature a technology is. So it goes from 0 to 9. 0 being, maybe that's a thing, or observing a weird phenomena in a lab or something like that. 4 to 5 is like being able to produce a technology in like a replicated environment, so in a vacuum chamber in a lab. And then like 9 is operational. So anything on the ISS that's being used for operations is like, this works in the environment, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of a scale to see like how mature this technology is. Is it ready to go, or does it need a lot of work? So the spaceship team look at levels from like 0 to 3, 0 to 4. So really, really cutting edge stuff. And we're looking at working with stuff with moon dust, So lunar regolith it's called, and one of the key things we want in the moon is oxygen. So we can actually extract oxygen from the moon dust. There's a few different ways to do this, but we're working on that, and we're like, hey, can we take this oxygen out to use it for oxygen for breathing, but also for fuel? So we do a lot of experiments, a lot of laboratory to understand the regolith, how it interacts with different things, how it works when you heat it up, and how to get the oxygen out of it. We do a lot of tools with XR called, so it's both augmented reality and virtual reality, and this is kind of to help the astronauts. So when they go up, obviously you can't get too much training, so we do a full VR for their VR for their EVA training, so for their spacewalks. But they'll also get one-to-one scale training on the ground with virtual reality, where you can't do that without virtual reality. And we also build mock-ups of lunar bases, so they get an idea of what it looks like. We do a lot of stuff with energy production, so like looking at things called fuel cells, so making energy from hydrogen, and like how are we gonna use solar panels more efficiently, etc., etc. There's a whole rate of stuff. There's a whole broad range of stuff that has never been done before, right stuff that's kind of established, but like, hey, how do we get it for spaceflight? So what I've been doing particularly with that team, there's two main projects. One is working with the lunar regolith, the moon dust. There's a weird phenomena we found called the Marangoni effect, and it's the same thing you get when you have a glass of wine or a glass of whiskey, and you see the drops, instead of going down, they kind of go up the side of the glass. It's quite engineering now, but or like physicsy, but it's essentially it's the movement of a fluid due to a surface tension, which isn't normal, and this happens when we heat up regolith in a high temperature. So we're like, or in a vacuum. So we're like, hey, let's understand this more. But one of the other big projects that I've been working on, and this is one we're actually quite happy with because it's gone quite successful, is something to diagnose the eyes. So when you go to space, there's a big problem. It's called SANS, space-associated neural-ocular syndrome. But essentially, what we believe it to be caused by is all the fluid from your legs moves up to your body, up to your head, just because there's no gravity, and you can get swelling on the cranium and just on the back of the eye, and it kind of affects your vision. So we want to understand more of this. So what we've sent up is a little device that just scans the back of the eye. It just clips on the back of an iPad that's up there, and you can take a picture of the back of the eye. And with that, then we've developed a machine learning algorithm that can detect whether this person has SANS or not, the astronaut, and then this will help us diagnose it much quicker. So in the space of a year, we went from this idea to actually sending it up to the station. So it's the station. So it's up there now. And next month, Matthias Maurer, the German astronaut, will start to do experiments with it. So it's a huge. That's a very snapshot. It's hard to explain some things, but it's a huge variety of technologies, and it's brilliant for students. If there's students listening, it's a huge student team. Have a Google, look at us. There's loads of stuff online. Spaceship EAC, and we always take internships 3 to 6 months, sometimes longer. But yeah, it's a really, really brilliant team, and really kind of cutting edge stuff that some of the team are doing. You know. Sorry, that's my long plug there. Sorry.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's fascinating when you're describing those. I mean, it really is at the forefront, isn't it, of so many things scientifically. I mean, when you're talking about extracting oxygen from moon dust, I mean, for me, like that, you know, you could probably take me through the mechanics of that, and I still wouldn't sink into my brain. But I was talking, as I said to you, I talked to Dr. Lawrence O'Rourke, who's based out in Madrid for ESA as well. And he said one of the key things, you know, qualities that someone has to have if you want to work for the agency, one of them would be patience, because a lot of these things take time. But when you mention like that idea of extracting oxygen from moon dust, what kind of a window would you guys expect to actually say, well, we can do that now? You know, or how far into that sort of an exercise are you?
Yeah, so it's a lot of the work we're doing is looking at for when we have like a sustainable presence on the moon. So some of the end real applications of it, like an up and running machine, would be well, I don't know, 2040, maybe more. Hopefully, when we have a very regular presence on the moon. But already they've so in the lab, we've already established this sometimes, like on a laboratory scale. So we have extracted oxygen and so on. So it's been proven. So now it's just developing this up, so the steps would maybe be like doing it on a much larger scale in the lab, doing a repeatable, and then maybe the next step would be having a very small payload sent up to the moon, maybe on a rover. So just a little experiment on the side of a rover that takes some, maybe can produce it, and then, hey, we've done it on the moon as we wanted to. This works. Let's scale it up. Let's build something that we can use to actually produce it. So that's kind of the time scale. But yeah, exactly. The nature of the beast. It's very rarely is it a quick moving thing on a grand scale. What you're doing day to day is not slow and boring. Like it's always moving day to day. But the whole project, just because there's a saying in the industry like space is hard. Like these things are not straightforward. You're like, hey, we just need to get there, and then there's 1,800 things to get in the way to get you there. You know. So yeah. But it is like, it's very rewarding when you get little steps and you're like, oh, and then at the end of the day you're kind of like, oh, I'm actually helping like humanity like explore here, go to the next step, you know. Even if you've done one little small thing and one little step, it's like that helps the grand movement, you know. So it is very rewarding in that sense, I'd say.
Brilliant. And can I ask you, what, maybe two double-barrel questions? So what have you enjoyed most about working at ESA, and maybe you could talk a little bit about any challenges that you've faced, or maybe the biggest challenge working there as well.
Yeah, so definitely I think what I've enjoyed the most, I think, has to be, I don't know, this is a bit of a cop-out, but the place itself. So obviously we've been remote for the last year or so, but even just working with the people or some of the meetings you're in, I do genuinely have to like pinch myself sometimes and be like, wow, like I just had a meeting with an astronaut and we are just talking about like, hey, if this thing has an issue in space, like how are we going to counteract this? Or like you are talking about like space flight, the stuff you see in films, and when you walk around the hall, we have like giant mock-ups of the spacecraft and stuff, and you're in, and like the end, it comes a little day to day, but then you get someone in to visit and you're like, oh, this is really cool, like, you know, like, and like it's, yeah, you do, it is really like you have to kind of take it for granted a little bit, but then you have to step back and realize like, oh, I'm really working with very, very cool people here, and there's astronauts walking around the corridor, and you end up working with astronauts a little bit and getting input and feedback, and then you might see them on the news and you're like, oh, like I know them, I talk to them, and so I think that there is definitely like a cool factor to it, you know, that I find that is really cool. Aside from that, maybe more what I really enjoy the work is I think the teams, just by the nature of the beast, it's a super international environment. I think nearly every company that's involved with it is very, very international. So I get lots of different experiences, lots of people different coming in with different backgrounds, and it just creates a really dynamic work environment. Majority of an extremely friendly work environment, and a lot of people who are quite passionate about what they do, and I think that kind of helps you to want to do more and stuff. So I think that's definitely some of the best things. Regarding challenges, yeah. So I think as you said at the start, like things can be quite slow. Just the nature of the beast. Like they have when you're sending up something to space, the amount of safety checks and stuff. It's long, and you have to go through 100 different things to make sure. So that's a bit of a challenge, and sometimes and I think that maybe as an agency, sometimes it moves slower than you would like it to. You're like, can we just get to do? But it's just the nature of the beast. But some of the big challenges we come off, and they're really good challenges. I like are the actual challenges in the work. So things you come across, like when I was saying this the stuff, the lunar dust I was working with. And the project, the entire thing I'm working on, this movement of fluid, or movement of the dust, like this Marangoni effect, that was actually a problem. We were trying to do a completely different experiment, and when we were doing this messing with the regolith, it just kind of it climbed up the walls like in the wine glass you see, and it went around and destroyed all the equipment. And we're like, what? This is a nightmare. And it was like, we're trying to do something else here, but then we actually like, hey, let's go back and try and understand it. And now that was the focus, you know, because like, hey, this is like completely new. So that was actually a challenge that became like kind of core of my work. So that's like, this is like the challenges aren't like, oh, we need it. It's completely new stuff that people haven't seen before. So that's some of the really cool challenges, I think.
Oh, that's great insight. Now that you've worked there, Eoin, are you overly critical about sci-fi movies, and Like, can you watch Star Trek now without saying that's rubbish? That'd never work.
It's kind of two tales. Like sometimes you get the big Hollywood ones, and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like Somewhere Hard, there was one. Oh, I can't remember. I think it was called Away. It was on Netflix about someone going to them, and the first episode, it was just like, oh my god. But but aside from that, no, you do watch it, and it's pretty cool. And I think most people in this industry at some point are inspired by sci-fi. And yeah, I'm not doing the Neil deGrasse Tyson, like actually that. No, I'll sit back and relax it. But it is really cool to be inspired, and you'd be surprised how much stuff in there. Either even just being named or actually like the idea for something is inspired by sci-fi, like, you know. Sometimes in the spaceship team we're brainstorming and we're kind of like, oh, like remember that, I don't know, like the BB-8 droid in Star Wars, and it's like, wouldn't it be cool? And then you're like, hey, maybe we can do it, and then like it might actually evolve into trying to build some robot like that, or, you know. So it does give a lot of inspiration. Yeah.
Very good. And you're coming to the end of your traineeship. So what's next for you? What's your ambition? What have you seen that you kind of go, yeah, this is the route I'd love to go down now? Or have you got to that point yet?
Yeah, that's it. I don't think I have really, in the sense that I just like time is ticking, but I think human spaceflight is brilliant. That's what really interests me. Like the whole space field is massive. Like between satellites, like Earth applications, just even things like GPS or Galileo, the European version, to help things on the ground. Like it's a huge broad field, and the human spaceflight element is like a tiny little bit of that, a tiny portion. But yeah, I think that's what really like inspires me, and like that's what I interest. So I'd love to pursue that more. Whether that be in the European Astronaut Centre, here we am, or some other company, maybe throughout Europe. That would be, yeah, that's kind of where I'm aiming for. Easier said than done, but that's where I'd like to follow up, you know.
Fantastic. And the last question, Owen, have you any advice maybe for someone doing the Leaving Cert today, or maybe just starting off in college, if they want to kind of follow in your footsteps? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think the end message would be there's more than one path completely to space, and I know people who've been in the industry and have been here for ages and tried and eventually got in different routes. People who have kind of got lucky and didn't try to get in and have gotten in. So if you want to get in, you can definitely do it if you want to be involved in space. What I'd say is there's so many routes. Just look out there. There's a huge amount. There's a huge amount of funding for scholarships to work in this field. If you want to study on topics related to this, there's a load out there. And ESA is a great, ESA, the website, they've a great resource for lots of different things. If you're finding them, there's also the UK Space Agency. Their website is very good. They've got a lot of information. A few other ones in Ireland. There's a crowd called Inspire Space. They have a lot of good information. The Blackrock Castle Observatory, they've a lot of brilliant stuff. And probably one of the core ones, is Zero Ireland, ESERO, I believe. And they're kind of like ESA's educational link in Ireland. So they've huge links. They're kind of probably the main one to go to. They've all the links to any upcoming careers fairs, actual careers profile of Irish people in space. Assuming if it's an Irish person listening to this, Irish people currently working in space, so you can see like kind of a 22 question: how did you get here? What have you done? What have your background? And yeah, they've all the relevant, useful links to the YDTs, links to internships, all this sort of thing. So that would be your go-to. But the main thing is, yeah, really, if you want to go to, it's completely open. It's not like what I taught NASA and US. Irish people working it. ESA's full of Irish people. Businesses around ESA and Spaceflight are full of Irish people. And Ireland itself is growing quite big. I think it's something like 5 companies a year for the next 5 years in spaceflight. So it's really up and coming. So keep your eyes open. If you want to do it, it's definitely there. If you're in university, look for internships. Companies love having interns in, and it's always a good way. It's great to get experience in your CV. And if you're just finishing the Leaving Cert, and again you're like me, I don't know what to do. Don't worry at all. I think one thing for spaceflight is it's not necessarily just engineers. I know I'm an engineer and I've banged on about engineering for the last I don't know how long, but again, as I said, I work with lawyers, artists, scientists, computer programmers, doctors. Like if you want to get in space, it's all topics are in there. So just I'd say pursue what you like, what you feel, what gives you a passion and an interest, and then if you want to go in space, there'll be a space for that. Later on you can find it, so
Brilliant advice, Owen. And what I'll do is as well, just on the links below the video, I'll put in the link for Acero and those other places you mentioned as well that people can go to and check out. But listen, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Really, really cool. And I wish you all the very best in whatever comes next for you. And maybe we could do an update video down the line and you can tell us how you're getting on. But it's been a real pleasure, Owen. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah. No worries, 100%. Thanks a million for having me on, and yeah, thanks a million. I think it's a great resource what you're doing here, so really, really appreciate it, Brenda. Thanks a million.
Cheers, Owen. Thank you. Bye, everybody.